President Obama is planning to meet with the leader of Syria's opposition forces.
The move comes as the Syrian government makes gains on the battlefield and President Bashar al-Assad plans for victory in a June 3rd election.
Yeah, the question now, is it too late for the U.S. to help end the violence there? Heather Sells reports.
Just days ago, the battered city of Homs stood as a rebel stronghold. But after the government's 2-year blockade and bombing campaign, the rebels have given up. Today, thousands of Syrians are streaming back into town, and the rebels are gone. Their surrender seen as paving the way for Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. The U.S. has already denounced his June 3rd election, calling it phony. This week, it's meeting in Washington with what it calls the moderate opposition and its leader, Ahmad al-Jarba.
His coalition, the Syrian opposition coalition that he has built, is an inclusive and moderate institution committed to the Syrian people and to the protection of all people, all minorities, all rights within Syria.
Just last week, the U.S. recognized this opposition group as a diplomatic foreign mission and pledged $27 million to help the rebels oust Assad. President Obama said today he'll meet with Jarba in Washington this week, but is it too little too late? Off the coast of Cyprus, international ships wait to collect the last of Syria's chemical weapons before a June 30th deadline, after Syria already missed an April cutoff. Early Tuesday, a leading human rights group said it has strong evidence that Syria used chemical weapons on rebels just last month. More grim news for a country that's already lost 150,000 people in its conflict. Humanitarian groups say more than 3 million Syrians have no access to essential goods and services. Heather Sells, CBN News.
And for more on the situation in Syria, we turn now to Tony Badran. He's a research fellow specializing in Syria at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Tony, the CIA is working with some rebels, training and providing protective equipment, but should the U.S. provide more weapons?
Yes, certainly. I think the effort that the U.S. is doing right now is way too little to address the actual dynamics of the conflict. It was recently, Secretary Kerry was recently quoted to have said to the visiting delegation of the Syrian opposition that the United States wasted a year in sort of getting its act together and supporting and consolidating the rebels. And in fact, they actually wasted more like 3 years. Because there's still yet to be any serious plan in terms of what the United States wants to achieve in Syria.
Let's talk a little bit more about that. 2 years ago, the Pentagon and State Department wanted to arm and train rebel groups. The White House said no. Did the U.S. drop the ball?
Oh, without question. I mean, the United States has yet to really zero in on the center of gravity of the Syrian conflict, and that is the regime of Bashar al-Assad, and Bashar al-Assad himself, obviously, as the head of the regime. Instead, the United States has concerned itself with the accidentals of the conflict and the various side effects of the conflicts. So it hasn't acted as a superpower, the one that can sort of impose a strategic guideline for the rebels themselves, as well as their sort of sponsor states. And to sort of achieve what it wants to achieve in Syria the way it wants it to achieve it. As of yet, the United States has been more concerned with kind of conflict management in the most passive way possible and just to avoid involvement in any way.
Tony, a big concern is arming rebels. A big concern with arming rebels is the role of al-Qaeda within opposition forces. Talk a little bit about that.
Yes, I think much has been made of this, but when you really look at the specifics of the conflict, I mean, there are a number of ways around it. I mean, everybody has said, the point has been made that, well, if you had addressed this earlier, the vacuum that arose that allowed al-Qaeda to enter would not have developed in this way and so on, but now it's kind of too late. Well, it isn't really too late. I mean, this is a dynamic conflict, and if you want to work with a group and set up a group with the help of active intelligence services from allied countries that are neighboring Syria, there's every way to do so, and that's why even as of last year, a lot of the cabinet members in the Obama administration were still advocating this course of action. So there are clearly ways around it. One of the more extreme it's not really an Al-Qaeda faction, the so-called Islamic State in Iraq and Syria or the Levant. It's been fought by the various rebel formations, including Islamist rebel formations among them, local Syrian Islamist formations. So the notion that somehow to paint the rebels with this brush of Al-Qaeda, or that we can't touch them because there is Al-Qaeda among them, I think is more of an excuse to do nothing than an actual sort of serious reason for not getting involved.
Okay. Tony Bedran, thanks for your insight, sir.
Russian.